Hi, everyone, and welcome to PAYDIRT, a Penn State football show. Along with former Penn State and NFL quarterback Matt McGloin, I'm Tom Hannafin. This show is brought to you by our sponsors, Funk Brewing, the official craft beer partner of PAYDIRT. We're big fans of Funk Citrus IPA and Silent Disco IPA, but this month, also check out the Funk Pumpkin Ale. Yes, it's fall in summer. And also keep an eye out for the Lucent Realms Nordic IPA. It only comes out once a year, and it's available as of the last week of July. You can find a variety of Funk Brewing beers at your favorite beer distributor and grocery store. Visit funkbrewing.com to learn where and how you can get their fantastic products. Must be 21 years or older to purchase. Please drink responsibly. Also, PAYDIRT is brought to you by our partners at BetOnline, who continue to be the #1 source for all your betting needs and sports info. Find all of the latest odds, news, and sports developments, including Major League Baseball, the latest fighting news, and even next season's early NFL futures. And with NFL training camp right around the corner, BetOnline has opened up odds for team wins, division futures, and of course, the Super Bowl. Head to betonline.ag or use your mobile device to sign up today and receive your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. And use our promo code BELIEVE, that's BLEAV, to get the bonus and get into the action. PAYDIRT is presented by BetOnline, where the game starts. And of course, we encourage all of you to head to shop.believe.com, that's shop.beleav.com, and search PAYDIRT for our 2 t-shirts. One has the official show logo over the heart. It comes in white, navy blue, and black. And the other is a navy blue t-shirt with the PAYDIRT word mark over the heart. And on the back, a la the 2012 season, has Matt McGloin's name and number. And we're coming up on the 10-year anniversary officially of the 2012 team, so it's perfect timing. Again, head to shop.believe.com, that's shop.beleav.com, and search PAYDIRT for our 2 t-shirts. Thank you for tuning in on ESPN State College, as well as checking out the podcast version of the show presented by the Believe Network, which is available now on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and wherever else you get your podcasts. And of course, hit us up on Twitter and let us know what you think of the show at ESPN Radio 1037, at McGloin QB11, and at Tom Hannafin. I've rambled for quite a bit. However, I have some very exciting news. As I mentioned, Funk Brewing is the official craft beer partner of the PAYDIRT podcast, the PAYDIRT show on ESPN Radio State College. We have some really exciting news. Coming mid-September, there will be a PAYDIRT IPA presented by Funk Brewing. For those of you watching on YouTube, you can see the official artwork for the cans. So what's going to happen is that you'll be able to buy a 4-pack from Funk Brewing, and it will have 2 different types of cans. As you can see on your screen, it's got Penn State colors all over it. It's got Matt McGloin's number 11, especially. We are on the side. It even has the official show logo and a QR code so that you can scan it and listen to the podcast as you're drinking the beer.
That's great.
So when you buy a 4-pack, you get 2 home jersey cans and 2 away jersey cans. I am so excited about this. It's been a personal dream of mine to have my face, even if it's a really small cartoon version, on a beer can, because I think, Matt, of like, and we're not even in the same stratosphere. The Rock has Terramana tequila. And then you've got Conor McGregor as proper number 12 whiskey. We are not that.
Broken Skull IPA.
There you go, for Stone Cold Steve Austin. We are not stars like that, able to just put our name on a product and sell it. So this is so cool. We want to say a big thank you to John Norman and everybody at Funk Brewing, and especially for it to be here in time for the football season. Yeah. As I mentioned, this will be out mid-September. Funk has great tap rooms in Aeneas, Elizabethtown, and York. And of course, head to funkbrewing.com to learn where and how you can get the PAYDIRT IPA as of mid-September. How stoked are you to have your number on a beer?
I tried to make my own beer once before, Tom. Yeah, it didn't turn out that great. So what I found out now is that it's a heck of a lot easier to let one of the best breweries on the East Coast make it and then just put our logo on it.
Right. That's way easier. I love the QR code on the side. Yeah. Like, I'm really excited about it.
And Tom, with the release, we're actually going to try to figure out a date for us to get down there at one of the tap rooms as well. And obviously, as we get closer to that date, we will let everybody know, what that date will be and what that event could look like.
Yeah, that'll probably be a live version of the
Mm-hmm.
podcast. So we're really excited about that. And again, thank you to Funk Brewing. They've supported us through all this stuff that we've been doing here. We're coming up on our 1-year anniversary on August 9th. So very excited about that. But today's episode, for all of you listening, and thank you for staying with us after us kind of patting ourselves on the back there, is that this episode is all about Penn State football and NIL, name, image, and likeness. On today's episode, we have a fantastic guest. He is former Penn State defensive lineman Aeneas Hawkins, who is currently the chief athlete officer for Sean Clifford's NIL agency that is known as Limitless NIL. Sean Clifford made headlines when he announced this NIL collective, or this NIL agency rather, that it was all over ESPN for an active player to start an agency to help other active players. And I assume after Sean's time at Penn State is over, he'll continue to help college athletes. That's the idea. This was a groundbreaking move, and Aeneas has some great insight in terms of what they're doing, their conversations with the existing football program, their conversations with Success with Honor, Penn State's official NIL collective. But this is such a big conversation, Matt. And you and I were talking about this before we started recording, is that NIL has changed everything, and especially with all the talk of conference realignment that we're enduring right now, the speculation and rumors and official recent changes. If you're an active player, you're going to the conference with the most money.
Sure.
And maybe the team means less. I don't know. What do you think when you're seeing all this talk?
And we know this now, Tom, but that's what the recruiting pitch has become. Here's what we can give you through the NIL. This is how much money we can give you. You know, we've heard that when a coach walks into a living room to recruit a player, that's the first question they ask. What does your NIL package look like for me? That'd be very difficult for me as a coach to walk in there thinking, hey, this is what our school can offer you, first class education, the opportunity to play the game. Our coaches have, played in the NFL. They've coached in the NFL. They've coached at multiple Division I programs here now. They've got experience as play callers or some of the best position coaches in America here. They're going to teach you the game the right way. You're going to get better year in and year out, and we think you can contribute and be a big part of our program. You make that pitch, but all these kids are thinking about is how much money can I make? The personal brand has become more important than the team, than the university, than an education. And it's just, for me, it's hard to watch it, week in and week out now. And you're just seeing some very interesting things throughout college football right now. And you mentioned, the limitless NIL and things like that. And for me, when I take a look at that, I just hope that doesn't become a distraction for guys like Sean Clifford or other players who are starting their own, NIL companies there. Because look, when you do struggle and things like that, that could be one of the first things that people will point to. Well, he's spending too much time worrying about making money or running his business or this and that. And, and we do get into talking a little bit about that with Aeneas Hawkins and what their plan looks like for the fall, so that Sean can focus 100% on football and just worry about the game and worry about Penn State football week in and week out. But, I'm questioning what is the right answer, Tom, for these student athletes. Do you let a player represent you? Do you let the school represent you? Do you let outside people represent you? I don't know. For me, trying to put myself back in college right now as a college quarterback and a college student athlete, I give Sean Clifford and his company, I give them all the credit in the world for doing what they're doing. But for me, looking at it right now, I think I would like to have somebody on the outside represent me, again, that way, just so I can focus on being a student athlete, all right, and commit all my time to that. That's all.
It's something that I've talked about here on this show multiple times, is that there's a couple schools of thought. Penn State, Michigan come to mind as schools that have outwardly said they're not going to pay players to come and play for their teams, that they will say, hey, once you're in the door, you then have access to NIL benefits. Then there's plenty of stories out there like Miami, Florida, or Texas A&M, that they're just outright paying guys to play. My question is, which is better for a student athlete? Would you rather just get paid to, be a great athlete? Or would you rather sacrifice time, during your busy schedule, like, let's not kid ourselves. Student athletes have a ton on their plate, and people can say that, oh, the education is different. They get things handed to them. It's like, all right, fine. There might be some places where that's the case. However, that's something that's a very stringent regulation at Penn State, is that James Franklin expects guys to go to class and get good grades, et cetera. And there's plenty of schools that are like that. But for me, selfishly, I'm like, if I'm playing and I'm, a star athlete at Penn State or something like that, isn't that enough? And at the same time, like, if I'm getting paid to play football at a high level, I don't want to sacrifice my time to go out to some function or activation to earn that money. There's nothing wrong with earning it on the football field.
Right.
That athletic gift should be enough, because frankly, it's why people are buying tickets. They're buying jerseys. They're buying T-shirts because of you and your team's play.
It's just, you mentioned kids getting paid prior to going to school or getting to school and then earning it and going that route, which I think is the correct route. Because if you're giving somebody $250,000, $500,000, $1 million before they step foot on campus, why do I have to come in and work hard then? I've already have all this money guaranteed to me, right? Mm-hmm. So when you walk in, again, there's this feeling of entitlement. Like, all right, I'm here. I'm getting paid X amount of dollars. This job is mine because you're paying me for it. Where it's like, that's not really the way it works, right? With that money, we now expect you to work hard and expect you to become the player that we think you can be. I just, and again, I've seen, like, it happens. It happened, Tom, before kids were even getting paid like this, right? 4 or 5 stars, guys with 50, 60 scholarship offers. I've seen them walk on campus and feel like they just deserve to be a starting quarterback because of the way the recruiting process was for them. And it's not, it doesn't work like that, right? Players around you notice it. Coaches notice you. It's just, I can't imagine being a coach right now. I can't imagine being a college football, athlete right now. I can't imagine going through the recruiting process and what that's like for these players and even the parents.
It's so funny to me because NIL, I think people were screaming about it, especially because of a video game. You remember EA Sports, college football? Well, there's the whole issue with the college basketball video game, and that's what spawned name, image, and likeness, was that, hey, these are players from once upon a time that are not getting paid for their name, image, and likeness. Mm-hmm. I look at it as kind of the Tim Tebow case study, former quarterback from the University of Florida. When Tim Tebow was playing at Florida, I believe his jersey was one of, if not the most popular jersey on the planet or in the United States. I can't remember what it was, but he was selling a ton of jerseys and he saw none of that money. Now, Tim Tebow's not crying poor and no one is weeping for him, but he's on the record saying that, that money is for the University of Florida. They gave me an opportunity and a platform and I wouldn't want any of that money. That's his decision. My point is that with name, image, and likeness now, this is a chance for those quote unquote Tim Tebows of the world who their best days, nothing against him as an athlete, are in college. There are plenty of stories like that, whether it's by injury or just guys are necessarily couldn't make it in the National Football League, and that's okay. Mm-hmm. But shouldn't it be that if you have 4 fantastic years of your life where your notoriety, your worth, your value, your hype, etc., is at an all-time high, shouldn't you profit from that? I think that's what's at the core of it, but it's getting muddied.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And I don't like for example, like CJ Stroud at Ohio State. I don't have a problem with that kid making money right now because he's earned it. He's one of arguably the best quarterback in America, right? In college football right now. I don't have a problem with him making money. It's the kids that haven't done anything yet in college football to earn that money. And they're already walking into that locker room with a target on their back, Tom. You know what I mean? It's already like, I've been here for 2 years. I've been here for 3 years. I've been working towards becoming a starting quarterback. Yet we have somebody now coming into the locker room here who we're paying $1 million who hasn't done anything yet. What has he done to deserve that money? Am I getting a fair opportunity here right now? I just think, it could create divide in a locker room. It could create distraction. There's just a number of things that I think is wrong with the way it's being handled right now, and just kind of throwing money to these players, or as you put it, buying football players right now.
It's become free agency. It's very, very close to the National Football League's model. So for more on this than to give us some insight, somebody who's literally got their hands in this debate and in this business right now, joining us here on PAYDIRT is former Penn State defensive lineman and now the CAO of Limitless NIL. Here's Aeneas Hawkins. Joining us now here on PAYDIRT on ESPN Radio State College, it is Aeneas Hawkins, former Penn State defensive lineman, but now is a part of the board of the Limitless NIL collective that was started by present Penn State quarterback Sean Clifford. Am I correct, Aeneas, that your title is CAO, Chief Athlete Officer? That's unique.
Yeah, a little unique, Chief Athlete Officer. That is my role. I've been having a blast with it so far, yeah.
Now, obviously, you played at Penn State. You were unfortunately had to retire due to a substantial amount of injuries from the game, but you found yourself in a good place now with Limitless. But let's cycle back to your time at Penn State. For those that don't know, explain to us a little bit your recruitment to Happy Valley and what you experienced as a Nittany Lion.
Yeah, recruitment picked up really quickly after my sophomore year. First interesting part of it, I played JV my sophomore year. We had a couple Power 5 D tackles in front of me that were older playing varsity, so I kind of had to bide my time there. Posted my huddle tape like everybody does after the season and accidentally started getting my first few offers. But after that, played junior year, did well, more offers started rolling in. And by the time I was ready to commit, I really was down to Cincinnati and Penn State. Those were the final two for me. I'm a Cincinnati legacy guy. But really, I have a lot of Pennsylvania connections as well. My dad grew up there. My uncles grew up there. So, I really wanted the opportunity to go to Pennsylvania, play where my family had played, and do it that way. Now, things didn't end up going as planned from a career perspective. I had like 35 scholarship offers. I was a pretty good player in high school, but the body just kind of started quitting on me. Had 5 big-time surgeries. On the field, it never came into fruition, but I give all the credit in the world to Coach Franklin and his staff, because regardless of what I was able to provide on the field, they kept me around as long as I was doing the right thing. So I'm still super appreciative of that today.
It's such a challenge. We had former Penn State tight end Adam Brenneman on the show last week. He had a similar circumstance in that he had to retire due to injury, but obviously a ton of potential. You had the benefit of that. Not that Adam didn't. His father also played college football, but your dad played in the National Football League. So how difficult was that for you to realize that you needed to retire, that the NFL might not be an option for you?
Yeah, obviously it was challenging. I grew up, there was never any question about what I was going to end up doing. I always thought, my dad played in the NFL, granddad, uncle. It just was a logical step for me. Really even, I kind of regret, when I signed to play in college, I wasn't as excited as some other kids might be because I always felt like that was a part of the process and it would end up happening eventually. It was definitely challenging. Just as a competitor, beyond just the family ties, you want to go in and be successful. You do things the right way in hopes that at some point, things will just end up working out how you think they should. By the time I got to the decision to retire, though, I really had wrestled with it for a couple of years, had toughed it out, had battled through. It was just time to go ahead and move on to the next phase.
It's fascinating. You see series like on Netflix, Last Chance U, where you see players that their entire life, they've either been told that they're going to play in the National Football League or they just believe it inherently. Do you take what you've learned now, as we talked about, you've stepped away from the game and now you're working with Limitless NIL to give back to current college athletes? How much are you trying to instill in them like, hey, it might not work out exactly the way everybody's been telling you it had, and this is a really important avenue to figure out?
Yeah, the biggest thing to me, and really it was the reason I agreed to kind of take this on with Cliff, just making sure student athletes realize, hey, this thing can be done tomorrow. There are no guarantees in any sport you're playing, and you don't know how it goes. So really helping kids maximize on the platform they've earned in the current moment, as well as setting them up for when those sports do end, making sure they have the tools they need to be successful beyond their sport. And that's really the biggest thing, adjusting when your career is over. What tools do you have in place to help you maximize beyond your sport? And that's a big part of what we do at Limitless NIL.
Now, before we dive into the Limitless NIL talk and the company and you working there now, I want to take a step back because when I look at the whole recruiting picture today and everything like that, it's so fascinating to me about how guys choose school, decide where they want to go. So you mentioned your family, you mentioned ties to Pennsylvania. How did James Franklin sell you on Penn State? How did he sell you on his focus, his philosophy? How did he do that? Because, year after year, we talk so much about Penn State's recruiting classes and things like that. So how did he sell you?
Yeah, well, number one, Coach Franklin is as charismatic as they come. And a lot of times, not necessarily in my situation, but a lot of times he'll get the parents on board before he gets the kid on board. You show him a great institution, you show him that giant stadium. It's hard to say no to that. But for me specifically, I was down to Cincinnati and Penn State. And really in my heart, initially, I wanted to go to Cincinnati just because, I grew up a Bearcat fan. Fickle came in, things were going well. So I was excited to be a part of that. But Franklin really, he kind of took the emotions out of it. He showed me who he had on each depth chart from Penn State to Cincinnati. And, hey, I know they're telling you you're going to play early there. Look at who they have on their team. Make sure this makes sense. So he really took a logistical approach with it. And then also I was kind of in a time crunch myself where it was like, hey, we've got 21, 22 commits. If you're going to do this, you better hurry up. We want you, but this is business and we got to keep moving. So, Penn State was the right choice for me. I look back at it now. I would have had the same injuries at Cincinnati that I had at Penn State, but now I have a Penn State network to lean on in my adult life. So definitely happy with the choice.
You mentioned the injuries, and somebody like myself, I was fortunate enough where, I didn't catch the injury bug, if that's what you want to say, or that's what you want to call it. I mean, I was able to practice every single day. I mean, you have, certain little things, right, that happen to you. Maybe, you hurt your ankle, your knee, or your shoulder, but you're able to battle through them, recover, and still practice and still play. But for somebody like yourself, what did that do for you mentally? Just, you get healthy, you get injured again, you get healthy, you get injured again. I mean, at what point in time were you thinking to yourself, like, man, maybe this just isn't working. This isn't the right, way, or was it, you mentioned Penn State over Cincinnati over Penn State. If you think you had gone somewhere else, would this have happened? Would this have occurred? So how did you deal with the injuries mentally?
Yeah. I mean, you think about all of it during the whole process, whether or not you want to admit that to yourself. All of it's kind of running through your mind. The thing for me was, especially with the first couple injuries, I still was sold on the fact that I was destined to go play in the NFL. And I was in a highly competitive program where you really don't have a lot of time to, feel bad for yourself. There's work to be done every day. So, just staying focused on the present moment. Coach Franklin always says, be where your feet are. So that's really what my focus was. But, by the end of it, I was so accustomed to getting hurt and having to come back from it that I would just create it as a challenge to myself. The last year, going into my last season, I had a fracture in my tibia, had to have surgery right before camp. So at that point, I kind of knew where football was heading. I knew it was about to be done. So at that point, it becomes me versus me, right? How can I best approach this situation? How can I get better through this and ultimately help the team with my attitude and my persistence? You just look for ways to contribute in any way. Once you see, hey, it's not going to be on the field. How can I make this team better in other ways?
It's a great mindset, man, because what that's doing, that's preparing you for life. In any moment, in any situation that you're going to face, you'll look back and be like, this is easy compared to some of the things I had to deal with throughout my college career. When you face the different types of adversity, and obviously somebody like yourself has been able to overcome anything that's been put in your way. Fast forward to today. Again, you've retired, you've decided to move on, now working with, the Limitless LLC. What's it been like working for that company and working with the Clifford brothers?
Yeah, I mean, number one, it's just been so exciting. NIL already, even if you're not involved in it on a day-to-day level, it's kind of exciting just because of all the changes that happen on a day-to-day basis still. NIL itself is kind of like the wild, wild west, and we're still kind of shaving that down to what we want it to look like on a national scale. But, it's exciting to come into work every day and know that I have the opportunity to help student athletes, and some of whom may be in situations like I was in. Football specifically is going to end for everybody, and most of it's not going to be on people's terms. So, I've lived that. I feel confident. that I have some tips and tricks that can help those kids through those things. So definitely excited. And the Clifford brothers, they're electric. They're both highly, highly intelligent dudes. Yeah, like I said, it's been a great time working for the Cliffords just because they're really smart dudes. They get it themselves. For athletes, by athletes is something we pride ourselves on. So they come in with new ideas, new ventures almost every day. So never a boring day, at least in the first 6 months of this so far.
How did you and Sean become friends?
Yeah, that's a funny question you ask. So Sean and I, people don't know this. I went to Archbishop Moeller, which is in St. X's conference in high school. And we're like, in Cincinnati, if you ask about rivalry games, that's the first one that people are going to throw out there. I was playing D-end, obviously. He was playing quarterback, so we weren't friends. When we did play at that time, I thought I was going to Ohio State. So it was beef every time we played each other. But obviously after that, we started working out together, ended up committing to Penn State. So our relationship really blossomed from there. And then just being teammates with them, Cincinnati guys stick together in the locker room. There aren't a bunch of us. So that's really how that friendship got rolling.
Well, and Cliff, to this day, very tight with KJ Hamler. They played growing up. So, I mean, like that connection has always been there. What was the response that you saw? Because when Sean announced that he was starting Limitless NIL, it was all over ESPN. It was a pretty big deal because we're still in the infancy of NIL and what players can do. So I think the thought of active players starting an agency was pretty remarkable. How did you see all that?
Yeah, I think it's cool. That's really the biggest mission of what we're doing is kind of trying to reshape what people think student athletes are capable of accomplishing. And I've been shocked myself in dealing with these student athletes every day. There are some really bright minds with big visions. And now it's just about helping them execute, right? So, you saw some of that in the media and from the fans where there was a lot of excitement. But then obviously, there's the concern and there's the question raising from the other side, right? Can Sean do this, number one? And how is he going to do it and play quarterback for Penn State too? So, I'm not going to reveal too much of our hand, but, we have plans in place so that Sean can focus on playing quarterback in the fall as he should. But yeah, obviously really excited. It was cool to see a lot of the support we got from around the nation too.
And on top of that, you guys aren't just representing Penn State football players. You guys represent Jair Brown. You also represent Miles Dredd from the Penn State basketball team, but you guys have even branched out to athletes at other schools. What has it been like connecting with those players and those communities?
It's really cool, man, because, like you said, NIL, it's so different from conference to conference and school to school. And, collectives are doing different things at different places. So it really gives us a comprehensive look at what NIL really looks like from a school to school basis. And we anticipate that'll grow as we sign more athletes at different spots. But also, there's a heartbeat everywhere with these student athletes that they are looking to do big things at NIL. And for most of them, it's not just about how much money they can bring in for themselves. They want to do things in the community. They want to understand their finances better. They want to start businesses. So it's been really exciting stuff.
What is Limitless NIL's communication like with, for instance, the Penn State football program or even Penn State's collective for NIL known as Success with Honor? Are you guys working with them on a regular basis?
Yeah, so Success with Honor specifically, we work with a lot. The process is kind of, they'll create an event. They may have something going on, and one of the athletes they want to work with is signed with Limitless NIL. We work in collaboration to create the best event possible for those student athletes. So they've been doing an outstanding job. And then from a program to program basis, really, we just focus on working with the compliance at each school. Let those football coaches focus on coaching football like they want to. And we let compliance do their job. We want to make sure everything we're doing is compliant. So really, that's the extent of how much we work with the programs.
This might be more of a personal preference, but it's something Matt and I have talked about a lot here on this show is that, you see rumors out of, for instance, the University of Miami paying a quarterback recruit allegedly $9.5 million just to come play, and Texas A&M throwing out a lot of money as well, allegedly. Penn State has been on the opposite side of that, and then new athletic director Pat Kraft has stated recently that Penn State is not going to pay players to come and simply play. It is once you get in the door, then you start being eligible for NIL benefits. What are some of the conflicts maybe that you guys are seeing with both those potential options, pay for play, and then also just straight up benefits as you're speaking to athletes?
Yeah, that's a great question. You guys are on the money. I think the first thing that I think of, when I hear that is just, kind of creating, different levels in college football. We want to get everybody on a level playing field. And I don't think Mr. Kraft's approach is the wrong thing by any means. But when you have schools like Miami and USC and these big time deals coming just to get guys in the door to play football, that can be a little bit problematic. And that's where it comes back to saying, the NIL industry is still a little bit like the Wild West. And I think everybody benefits from a more concrete set of rules and regulations that we're all following.
How do you guys play right now where you're at? And obviously, as Tom mentioned, you're in the early stages here of this company, but what's the future look like? How do you plan on expanding and signing more and more athletes? We talked about James Franklin selling, Penn State to certain recruits. Sell me. Why sign with you?
Yeah, well, the biggest thing is it's kind of funny because, sometimes we talk about our principles of Limitless NIL and they align very directly with how Coach Franklin was recruiting us. But it comes back to the fact that, a lot of agencies are able to make kids money. What we've learned in NIL in year one is that there is plenty of money out here for student athletes to make. We're no different than any other agency. We can get that done too. But a lot of what we're doing is through the roots of education. We're teaching finance. We partner with Beacon Point, who's been outstanding. They're doing finance crash courses with all of our athletes. They're learning how to file their own taxes. So really what we're doing, and that's not just with finances, we have a peer advisor program that helps the student athletes, with the time commitments they have just with school and their sport, right? So taking some of the stress off of them with NIL so they can still focus on the things that are most important. They went to school for a reason. So helping them graduate and, excel in their sports are our priority. And we do a lot of the heavy lifting. So, that's really what I'd say separates us is the educational factor and providing student athletes with the tools needed to be successful beyond their sports.
Is there a fine line between, again, when it comes to this NIL and deals and companies and sponsorships, if for you guys, is there a fine line between pushing for deals or allowing the right deal to come to your athlete? You know what I'm saying by that? Like not
absolutely
spending too much time outside of, what's actually important, right? And that's getting a first-class education at Penn State. And then also playing the game you're there to play.
Yep. I think, it's the first year of NIL, I think a lot of student athletes were just really excited that NIL was a thing. So they would do any deal that came to them. Most student athletes have wisened up, and now they're only doing deals that align with, whatever their values are. Hey, I believe in this product. I love this product. They're really doing things that they want to do. And we're a big proponent of that. We don't want our student athletes in any deals that they don't actually align with. That's a big piece of what we're doing. And it goes back to the point, you talked about how we're going to expand. We want student athletes who want to be proactive and active participants in NIL and have a vision. We have seen just in the first few months that we are able to sign athletes. And a lot of athletes want to work with us. So now it becomes about refining and making sure the student athletes' values and our values are the same, and we can move forward together that way.
Where do you guys see this going? Like will there come a time when the NCAA cracks down on this NIL thing and take over, or are we going to continue to see more and more players creating their own branding companies?
Yeah, there's no telling. If I had that answer, we'd already have our next play. But
I guess what I'm saying then, are you hearing or seeing more, of these players like starting to do this or wanting to do this, wanting to represent themselves? Because when I look at it and when I first saw, Sean creating this company, I thought my first thought was be careful.
Yep.
Because the last thing you want is for something like this to become a distraction.
Absolutely. I think, I don't know how many student athletes will see starting their own, agencies or even representing themselves. But a big piece of what we believe in is, again, equipping student athletes to be able to do those things. You know the numbers, 78% of NFL players are broke, divorced, and depressed in like 3 years of retiring, right? That's a problem. There's an educational gap there. And whether you want to blame the athlete, the NCAA, or the schools these kids are at, we are here to help equip them. And we hope that there's a time where these athletes are comfortable enough to represent themselves and to do it well without it being a distraction. But until then, come sign Limitless NIL. We're doing big things. There's a shameless plug right there, but yeah.
So give us a little bit before I pass it back to Tom. Give us a little bit about what August through December can look like for you and the rest of the crew there at Limitless while Sean takes over and hopefully leads Penn State to a fantastic season.
Yeah, so we have an outstanding team, and Sean would tell you this too. And we're really at this point able to run the business ourselves. We have all the tools we need to do that. So that was strategic too. We want Sean to be able to go focus on leading Penn State football to a Big Ten championship. I just got done playing that. Again, not only help Sean, but it's going to help Limitless NIL too. It gives credibility. So we want Sean to go have an electric year. But really, as far as August to December, we're moving forward. We're going to continue to grow. We're going to continue to get deals done for our athletes and continue to expand as a company.
A lot has been made recently, Aeneas, of the conference realignment that we're seeing. Obviously the Big Ten has just shifted dramatically. That'll be in 2024. That is, USC and UCLA are coming on board. The SEC is added recently, and now it's questions of what's going to happen with the Big 12, the Pac-12, the ACC. You represent Jalen Marshall of Georgia Tech, who's within the ACC. You represent Brendan Bates, I believe, from the University of Kentucky in the SEC. When you're having these conversations with clients and potential clients and you see all this conference realignment, what's your thought in terms of, how can I capitalize on this? Or are the players even thinking about, hey guys, I might need to hop around here a little bit. Maybe a transfer is in my future. How does that affect things?
Yeah, I think it's very interesting. It brings in things like the transfer portal, and then the idea that maybe college football is going to 2 mega conferences. And I think it's early to tell for most of our athletes. I think a lot of them still don't know what to make of it. We're still kind of working through it ourselves. But just from a business perspective, we're obviously tied into the Big Ten very well. So when you talk about bringing USC and UCLA in, that changes our approach because we want to run the Big Ten as far as NIL is concerned. So, it changes our approach there a little bit. And the portal obviously is its own different animal, but it's so new that we're still strategizing that ourselves.
There's a lot of changes. It feels like the ground is shifting beneath our feet within college football. It's fascinating, and your boots on the ground for it. And the question I've asked, Adam Brenneman and I were talking about this is, the way that things are going with these mega conferences, are we going to need the NCAA much longer? I mean, it's really, and you might not have the answer to that, but it's just surprising, with these mega conferences, they might be self-sufficient at some point. Obviously, you guys are still abiding by all the NCAA regulations, but I mean, it just seems like things are going to shift very quickly.
They're changing fast. They're certainly changing fast.
So let's rewind a little bit back to your playing days, because you had some ridiculous talent around you on both sides of the ball. And you also went through some really amazing circumstances. Like, obviously you had injuries and, not to overstate or understate your career, but I mean, you played through the freaking pandemic. Granted, we're still in it, but you played through that 2020 season, which had to be fascinating. 2021, we all remember the flu and Vayu game. You played in some important games, and you saw some fantastic settings with bowl games, et cetera. What's like one moment that you look back on, you're like, oh God, that was so much fun?
Yeah, man, you ask a lot of good questions. I think, the first moment that was really fun, this is going to be a boring answer, that 2019 wideout with Michigan was far and away my favorite game.
Patterson getting messed up.
Oh man. That Beaver Stadium noise was unbelievable that day. That was a big one. But then you talk about all the, historic events I just happened to be a part of with college football. I think that COVID year, especially, was such an emotional roller coaster, man. From the season getting canceled one day to, a week or so later, the season being reinstated and going back from Cincinnati to State College after a week of eating nothing but Skyline chili and hanging out. It made it all very interesting. I think those moments specifically, but I'd also throw the Cotton Bowl in there too, where Micah Parsons and Journey Brown really, really solidified themselves as 2 elite players. Those were big moments for sure.
Some of the guys that you got, like you mentioned, Micah Parsons, obviously he's doing ridiculous things with the Dallas Cowboys now in the National Football League. When you're in these practices and like you're getting your feet wet in 2018, are you kind of like, oh, wow.
It's a different experience. I'll tell you what, my first drill, actually, and I've told this story before, we were in a tackling circuit, first day of camp in pads. Micah Parsons, they had the pads lined up. We were doing like a little Oklahoma type drill, wrapping up, whatever. Micah Parsons bent the corner and turned up in the A-gap, and I had to go meet him in there. And as a D tackle, I was confident running in there. I had no problem with that.
You were what, 290 during your playing days?
I'm about 290. I'm feeling good.
290, yeah.
I've got a weight advantage. Micah Parsons hit me so hard that the entire left side, my whole left arm was completely numb for 30 minutes. Could not feel anything. That's my first rep of college football. So that's the cool thing about it. A lot of people are surprised when somebody has a breakout year. The guys in the locker room never are. They know exactly who they're going to be because they're dealing with them every day at practice.
It's fascinating because many people have been on the record saying that Micah was just learning the linebacker position at Penn State. So now for him very quickly to turn that around into Defensive Rookie of the Year, really unbelievable. Aeneas, thank you so much for your time. For all of our viewers and listeners, where can they learn more about Limitless NIL and where can they follow you on social media?
Yeah, I'll tell you what, go to @LimitlessNIL on Instagram and on Twitter. Instagram specifically, we're posting updates every day with the deals we're doing, the kids we sign. That's the best way to keep up the tabs. And you can follow me @HawkSauce. I'll have my own updates on there too. I'm still doing the broadcasting thing. So I'd like to grow up and be like Mr. McGloin and Tom here. So a lot of updates going there too.
Hey, whenever you grow up, you're welcome to come on the show. I was going to say, You're doing just fine. You're a CAO at an NIL agency, so that's not bad, man. Aeneas, thank you so much for coming on, and best of luck to everything you got going on at Limitless going forward.
Thank you so much. Appreciate you guys having me on.
Thank you all so much for joining us. We'll be back on ESPN State College next Thursday, again from 3 p.m. to 4 p.m. Eastern. If you want to check out the podcast version of this show presented by the Believe Network, this episode and our entire library of shows is available now on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and wherever else you get your podcasts. And of course, let us know what you think of the show on Twitter @ESPN Radio 1037, @McGloinQB11, and @Tom Hannafin. PAYDIRT is presented by Bet Online and by Funk Brewing. Thanks again, everyone, and join us next week for more PAYDIRT.